Hi everybody, Susan Storm here, and today I want to talk about what ISFJs are like when they're at their best and when they're at their worst. A lot of times when you read descriptions of ISFJs, you're reading a description of a fairly healthy ISFJ. Maybe not the Messiah ISFJ, but definitely more above average. And if you are going out in the world and you are interacting with many different types of people, you might meet an ISFJ who is incredible and it doesn't have some of the weaknesses that are described in ISFJ posts. Or you might meet a really unhealthy ISFJ and then read about an average to healthy ISFJ and think that can't be this type. So that's why today we're going to dive into what this type looks like when they're at a really optimal level of emotional health and when they're really struggling or in a less mature space. If you're new to personality type, ISFJ is one of the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types, and the code ISFJ stands for introvert, sensor, feeler, judger. And you can definitely check out, I've made another video that is an intro to this type. Let's start by looking at what ISFJs are like at their best. Healthy ISFJs bring a sense of groundedness and calm to life. They tend to be very gentle, stable people. ISFJs are continually looking for a sense of stability, a sense of homeostasis. They like to know what's going to happen, what to expect, and then they tend to create really positive routines and traditions that give life a sense of continuity, a sense of meaning, and a sense of calm. They don't like to not know what's going to happen, to have to be really spontaneous for flexibility. The healthy ISFJ is not rigid. They like having a general routine, but they've also made peace with the fact that life can be unpredictable at times and that sometimes new information or trying new things can be a really healthy way for them to grow as people. One of the things that ISFJs are really good at doing for the people they care about is creating that really consistent sense of stability. They're people who will follow through on their word. They'll be there when they say they'll be there, and they won't be there late. They also notice the small details that mean a lot to other people. For example, if you were to say, I tend to run cold. Other people around me are always warm and they keep the thermostat too cool, and I'm always cold. But if you're around an ISFJ, they're probably the kind of person who's going to remember that and offer you a throw blanket or a jacket or maybe a hot drink. They notice those little details that tend to pass by a lot of other types. To ISFJs, those fine details matter. They all add up to this big story about who you are as a person, and to them, that story matters. They also like to create order out of chaos. They do not like a chaotic, unpredictable life. If you are in the presence of an ISFJ or you visit them at their home, you're going to notice that things are calm, things are peaceful. The lights aren't too bright, the music's not too loud. There's creature comforts around them. And this tends to just give them a really calming aura for other people. I have a son who's an ISFJ, and he's very concerned with atmosphere. The lights in his room have to be just right. The temperature needs to be just right. He likes a certain soft type of music or the sound of rain. And he curates these atmospheres wherever he goes. And he wants it to be just right so that his senses aren't overwhelmed. They're perfectly content. And anything that's too extreme tends to disrupt all that. And one thing I've noticed with many ISFJs is this natural attunement to the sensory. So one thing that a healthy ISFJ is really good at creating is this very comfortable, calm, tranquil environment. Healthy ISFJs are also deeply attuned to the emotions of the people around them and the needs of the people around them. They're really good at picking up on what people are feeling. And then they're also really good at prioritizing those feelings and trying to create an empathetic connection with another person. They genuinely notice what supports people. They remember what soothed you the last time you were anxious. They remember your preferences because those preferences help them care for you in a real, tangible way. Some of this has to do with a mental process that ISFJs use called extroverted feeling. Extroverted feeling is really good at noticing the emotional content of what's happening around you. And when it's paired with introverted sensing, it's very attuned to things like body language, tone of voice, the speed at which someone is talking, all these little details that give underlying clues about how someone is feeling. ISFJs are generally really good at reading people, and they want to understand how other people feel and bring them back to a feeling of harmony and positivity. ISFJs enjoy hearing your stories, what you've been through. how you feel about things. They enjoy unpacking that. That helps their extroverted feeling side to tune into the frequency of who you are as a person and what's meaningful to you. Many times, ISFJs will go above and beyond for the people they care about, helping out when they're sick, helping out when their kids are driving them crazy, providing practical support, but also empathetic, emotional support at the same time. There's a quiet strength to the healthy ISFJ. They tend to not be very dramatic people. They believe in following through on their word and being the steady rock that the people around them can depend on and lean on when life gets turbulent. And they're also the people that can bring meaning to those experiences that many people just pass by. Introverted sensing, which is the ISFJ's dominant function, is really good at finding a subjective or personal meaning in what's happening in the moment, and then holding on to that personal meaning and ritualizing that moment in the future. So this can look like having a conversation under the stars one night and drinking hot chocolate and thinking, this is really special. The person with the ISFJ might think that was really special. I had such a great time. And then the next year they've forgotten about it, or it's just something that they didn't really dwell on. Whereas the ISFJ was like, this was really special. I like this. This meant something very specific to me about this relationship. And then what they do is they ritualize that experience and they say, hey, let's do this again at this time next month. And then they create these positive and meaningful routines that help that experience and the meaning related to that experience to blossom and bloom into something really meaningful and powerful and connecting. I like to think of ISFJs as the keepers of meaningful memories. They don't let it go, they don't just move on. They hold on to those beautiful memories and then they keep commemorating them and keep deriving more meaning from them, no matter how many years have passed. And I think that's something that's really special and important that they bring to the world. Now let's turn the page and look at what ISFJs are like when they're at their worst. So at their best, ISFJs are really great at consistency, at creating these positive routines. At their worst, they become trapped by the routine and they become very skeptical of anything that lies outside their known experience. ISFJs tend to be creatures of habit. They like what they know, they like what's familiar, they like revisiting those past experiences. But when they get too imbalanced or too overinflated on that side of their personality, what it can mean is that they become very suspicious of anything new. They don't want to ever rock the boat and risk being uncomfortable. And they get so fixated on that comfort and that routine that they end up becoming rigid and narrow minded. Instead of exploring new ideas or new experiences or new ways of seeing things so that they can keep growing and progressing as people, they get stuck in a rut. So, an unhealthy ISFJ may appear very judgmental or they may appear stagnant because they are not pursuing anything new. Another quality that some ISFJs can have when they're not at their best is that they become over accommodating to other people. A lot of times, this is shaped also by the messaging that they received as children. Many children are told that selflessness is the prime virtue. It's so important to be selfless. And ISFJs use a process called extroverted feeling, tend to be extremely aware of how other people feel and what they emotionally need or what they practically need. While this is a good thing, this side of them can also become overinflated. ISFJs may struggle with prioritizing their own personal needs because they're so busy taking care of everyone else. This can look like having a massive to-do list of your own, but taking on one more task for someone you care about. It can look like needing rest, but instead of actually giving yourself the rest you need, staying up late, helping your kids with things, or cleaning the house. In many ways, ISFJs tend to not include themselves in the emotional and practical support that they give to other people. It's almost like they don't see themselves as an individual in their proximity because they don't see themselves and they're not responding to themselves in an external way. They stop prioritizing their own personal needs. And so an unhealthy ISFJ can become a people pleaser. They can struggle with issues like codependency, and they may have a really hard time feeling like it's okay to do something that makes them happy if they feel like it might take away from something someone else needs. Another quality that some ISFJs can have is over identifying with societal values, what their community says is the right way to be, or what their culture says is the right way to be, and not internally questioning their own values and beliefs to find out whether they really hold weight or whether they really hold up to scrutiny. Because their dominant function, introverted sensing, is really fond of the familiar and what they know through experience and their subjective impressions and the experiences they've gathered through life. It's very common for ISFJs to really stick to those familiar things, and that can be in familiar belief systems as well. Now, having a belief system is not a bad thing, but some unhealthy ISFJs may stick to belief systems that aren't serving them or are not necessarily good for them or other people, simply because it's what they know and they don't like to question it. Having to question it would be really uncomfortable for them. This can also be a sign that an ISFJ is not really in touch with their introverted thinking function, the third function in their stack, or their extroverted intuitive function, which is the fourth function in their stack. These two functions are really good at logical scrutiny as well as exploring and considering new ideas and novel approaches. And when you're out of touch with those two functions, sometimes it can mean you just cling to what's familiar and what your community likes instead of questioning it critically at times when you might need to. For example, let's just say there's an ISFJ child who's raised in a cult, right? And they maybe have some good experiences in that. It's what they know, and they like consistency and they like what's familiar and stable. And so they continue to stay in this cult. In fact, they raise their children in this cult, and it goes on and on. And the relationships of everyone they love are in this cult. All the people that they care about, that they look at and they value, are in this cult. So both their introverted sensing side and their extroverted feeling side may want them to stay in this cult. This is obviously an extreme example, so I don't mean to say that ISFJs are prone to being in cults because I don't think they are. I'm just using this as an example of something that can happen in smaller or different ways. So unhealthy ISFJs may stick to institutions, beliefs, or systems that have negative qualities because it's comfortable, it's familiar, and it aligns with the espoused values of the people around them. So that's another thing to look out for. If you're dealing with an unhealthy ISFJ, that can be another side effect of being in an unhealthy mental space. So here are a few things that ISFJs really need in order to be healthy. They need to feel safe when it comes to self-expression. ISFJs, if they learn early on that their mode of operating is met with distaste or condescension, they're going to close up and they're not going to be able to lean into their strengths and develop them in a positive way. Instead, they might develop them in a warped or one-sided way that does not serve them. Or they might feel like there's something broken about them, something that isn't quite right, that they are deficient in some way, and neither of those things are good. So they need to feel like it's okay to be their unique selves, and this goes really for every personality type. But they need to feel like it's okay to want those creature comforts, to need to know what's going to happen and what to expect. This can look like an ISFJ child trying to get ready for school, for a new school, and the parents saying, it's okay, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk through how everything's going to go and what to expect ahead of time so it doesn't feel like a chaotic surprise. That is a way of honoring an ISFJ's needs when they're a child. As an adult, this can look like a spouse giving them time to prepare for things, letting them know how things are likely to go, honoring their routine and not being really disruptive and chaotic as a person. Another thing that's really important is for an ISFJ to have an atmosphere where they feel safe to express their needs without feeling guilty. And sometimes this can take practice from an ISFJ. Sometimes other people aren't making them feel guilty, but they're making themselves feel guilty. So it can mean that they need to practice expressing their own needs, wants, and desires without guilt. One thing I always have to tell feeling judging types is that you are not responsible for other people's feelings. You're responsible for your own feelings. Yes, your words matter and you should be responsible with your words. So if you go out and you start insulting people and they have hurt feelings, then you could feel a little bit responsible for that. But in general, as long as you're not doing anything overtly cruel, you are not responsible for making sure that everyone is emotionally regulated at all times. And if you're trying to do that, you are blocking other people from the growth that they need to develop individually for themselves. So, one, if you're an ISFJ, it's really important that you are able to differentiate what you're responsible for and what other people are responsible for, so that you don't get wrapped up in that incessant people pleasing and the feeling that no matter what you do, it's never enough. And two, you also need to practice prioritizing your own wants and needs and being able to ask for things that you want and need without feeling like it makes you a bad person. It's very important. Many ISFJs overwork themselves, and so making sure you're getting time for rest, getting time to savor the little things, that will really help you to feel truly and fully alive and whole. Another thing that is important is not to ignore maybe the less preferred sides of your personality. Yes, you like the routine and you like the familiar and you like consistency, but it's also important to try out new things every once in a while or explore a new idea just because. So this could look like going somewhere you've never been once a month. It doesn't have to be driving across the whole country. This could be going to a new coffee shop or trying out a new trail or a new state park. Whenever you explore a new experience or a new idea, it gives your introverted sensing side something to ponder on and mull over and extract meaning from. So, as you gradually incorporate new experiences, ideas, and people into your life, you keep building up a richer and broader database for your introverted sensing to find meaning in, which over time creates more meaning for you. This doesn't mean that you should constantly be seeking new novel things. I'm not trying to turn you into an ENFP here. It just means that you should consistently and occasionally try out new experiences so that you can broaden your library of meaningful personal experiences that you can then learn from. This also helps you to avoid that whole rigid point of view that can happen with really unhealthy ISFJs. And the whole exploring new ideas thing, that's also important so that as you explore new ideas and you talk to new people with different points of view, you can also, by doing that, have something to compare your current beliefs to. And if something that is wrong or inaccurate with your current belief system, it gives you the opportunity to compare it with something different. And that sometimes shines a light on maybe limiting beliefs that you have. Another thing that's important is to not try to be an extrovert. Some ISFJs take on a lot of social responsibilities. They feel very responsible for their communities and for the people around them. And sometimes they work themselves to exhaustion because they're taking on so much. And one of the problems with that is one, burnout, for one thing, but two, it pulls them away from that more quiet, contemplative, meaning making side of their personality. It also pulls them away from the thinking, logical, analytical part of their personality. Those two parts of the personality become more powerful when an ISFJ has time alone to reflect and think. And so, if you are constantly busy doing tasks, projects, or socializing in the world around you, and you're not making enough time for alone time, then you may find that you feel more scattered but less meaningful. And you may feel that you easily subscribe to things maybe that other people believe, but you're less independently analytical about what you believe. And this can result in some of those limiting beliefs staying stuck in your psyche. On the flip side of that, as an ISFJ, you also don't want to become too isolated and reclusive. Some ISFJs, they get stuck in a rut, they pull away from other people, they stick to what's familiar, and they don't go out of their shell ever. And that's not healthy either, because the more you experience new things, and the more you talk to different types of people, the more whole your perspectives are going to be, the more rational you're going to be, because you're testing your beliefs, ideas, and worldviews out there in the real world. And you're also accumulating more facts and experience with which to inform your worldview. So it's really important as an ISFJ that you are making ample time for alone time. As an introvert, very, very important, but also that you're giving yourself regular time out, accumulating new experiences, talking to people. It doesn't have to be giant groups, it can be one-on-one, but you're balancing both the introverted and extroverted sides of yourself. Because we're all a little bit ambiverted, really. Even if you have an I in your type code, you have both introverted functions and you have extroverted functions. You can find out more about that in my video that I made about ISFJs or in an article which I will link to in the description. I hope that this has been helpful and given you a better idea of both the good and the bad sides of being an unhealthy or healthy ISFJ. As always, like and subscribe for more videos like this. I also have written a book for ISFJs called The ISFJ Understanding the Protector. Got a lot of information about your cognitive functions, your relationships, what it's like being a parent, what it's like going through midlife. It's packed with information, but it also has journaling prompts to help you understand yourself better as you go through the book. So I will leave a link to that in the description as well. I hope to see you next time. Bye, everybody.